Hello everyone! Welcome to the very first episode of D&D Creature Feature. This is the show where I read you a D&D based creepypasta that I wrote myself, always revolving around a monster, and at the end I give you the stat block of that monster for you to use in your own D&D campaigns. But first let me introduce you to the main characters of these creepypastas. These two tiefling fellas are a pair of adopted siblings named Edgar and Valorie. Edgar is a chthonic tiefling, College of Spirits bard, and Valorie is an infernal tiefling, College of Lore bard. So, yeah, anyways, let's get into it. The Soulless Ones. After running through the pouring rain for nearly an hour, me and Valorie stumbled into the inn, completely soaked in rainwater. We're a pair of researchers determined to travel the world, discovering monsters and supernatural phenomena along the way, and finally compiling them all into the ultimate bestiary of unknown creatures. We had spent this afternoon investigating an old crypt that housed a portal to Hades, but after an altercation with a particularly nasty Arcanoloth, the portal was closed, vanquishing the fiendish threat. When we left the crypt, it just started pouring out of nowhere, and since this portal decided to open in the middle of nowhere, there wasn't really any place we could take shelter in sight. But luckily, Val had bought a map of the area before we embarked on this venture, and thus was able to locate an inn that could shield us from the rain. The inn itself was a very impressive building, with high ceilings, fancy carpeted floors, and intricately detailed window designs. Holy Bahamut, this place seems expensive. Are you sure we can afford to stay here, Val? I asked my adopted sister, gazing around the lavish room in awe. Well, we'll have to see, she replied, striding in the direction of the reception. The receptionist, a skinny man with short black hair and very heavy bags under his eyes, was fast asleep. Until Val approached, resulting in him snapping awake and looking at her with his sad, sunken eyes and forced smile. "Good evening, goodly lady. How can I help you?" the receptionist greeted her. Yeah, I wanted to ask how much a room here would cost, because my brother and I may be interested in renting one," Val spoke to the man. "One room would run you 50 gold pieces per night," he explained. I looked at my sister, and my sister looked at me. "That's actually fairly cheap," I mumbled. "We're booking a room for one night," Val confirmed to the receptionist. "Wonderful!" he energetically exclaimed, darting up into a standing position. "Simply write your names and your room number in the guest book, hand me the gold, and you're good to go. You'll spend the night in room number 18. I walked up to the guest book, grabbed the feather and ink neatly placed next to the old withered tome, and wrote Valorie and Edgar Wraithtaker on one of the empty pages. While Valorie was paying for our room, I decided to flick through the guest book a bit. While reading the names and room numbers of the different people who have checked into the inn, I realized something. Only one person had ever occupied room number 5. Right after Val stepped away from the reception, my curiosity got the better of me, and I asked the receptionist, "Excuse me? Why was the 5th room only ever rented once?" The receptionist looked at me confused. "I don't exactly know what you're speaking of, good sir. That room is currently occupied," he responded. I wearily glanced at him before following Valorie, who was already signaling for me to follow her into our room. Shortly after, my sister was perched on her bed, reading a smut novel she had purchased from a shady shop days prior, while I vacantly stared out of the window at the melancholic grey skies. While the inn was a very nice locale, something about it just felt so off. Ed, are you okay? Valerie asked me after a while. I don't know, Val. I just think that something about this place is deeply wrong. That guy had a very weird demeanor. The place itself is just in the middle of nowhere, and apparently only one person has ever rented the 5th room, despite the receptionist saying that someone is currently living there. I explained to her what was on my mind. Maybe the person is still living in the room, Val speculated. But their name was one of the first in the guest book. Wouldn't that imply that they have lived here for an abnormally long period of time? I questioned. Well, if you want, we could investigate it, Val suggested with a giddy tone in her voice. I confidently smiled at her before scoffing. Ha! Sure. Shall we pay a little visit to room number 5? Val began to nod energetically, and soon we headed to this enigmatic room. I knocked on the door, but nobody opened. Do you suggest we break in? Val giggled sheepishly, seemingly a bit too excited at the idea of breaking and entering. Why not? I shrugged and opened the door of the room. I peeked my head slightly into the chamber and whispered, hello? No one responded, so me and my sister strolled into the room, and we were immediately greeted with a horrible odor. And after carefully rummaging around the room, we discovered exactly where the peculiar smell came from. Underneath the bedsheets was a man. He was terribly thin. His skin was a sickly light blue color. His mouth was mangled into an unrecognizable maw with uneven teeth and strands of flesh connecting the top and bottom jaws. My sister and I stared at the horrifically mutilated person in front of us, very disturbed by this discovery. So I guess that's why this guy never checked out. Val stuttered half-jokingly with her eyes fixated on the gore in front of her. But that doesn't make any sense. The staff of the inn would have noticed by now and removed the... I was interrupted by a terrible revelation. While saying the last sentence, I had moved closer to the man and soon realized that he was still breathing. What I previously had thought to be a corpse was now showing signs of life against all odds. Val? You might wanna check this out. I gestured her to come closer in order to get her on the same page as me. Dear God, she mumbled as she also witnessed the person's still functioning respiratory system. I guess that answers that question. We hastily exited the chamber in order to head back to the reception of the inn, with the intention of asking the staff member working there if he was aware of the man in room number 5 and the condition he was in. When all of a sudden, a strange occurrence happened. While leaping through the hallway, the ground beneath us started to shake. I looked through one of the windows and saw that the inn and the surrounding area were being encased in an eerie blue haze that, slowly but surely, blurry, unrecognizable figures emerged from. Oh God, Val, something horrible is happening. We need to get done with this as quickly as possible, I gasped in shock. We quickly made it back to the entrance hall of the establishment, where we noticed that the receptionist was yet again fast asleep, with his face pressed against his desk. Val walked up to him, but he didn't respond in any way. Thus, we decided to lift up his head, only to find that he was now unrecognizably mangled as well. Out of desperation, I grabbed a large sword from a decorative suit of armor positioned in the hallway, despite me not being a very great swordsman. "Ed, what the actual hell is happening here?" Valorie questioned, her whole body shivering. It was at that point that I noticed how freezing cold the air had gotten all of a sudden. Just then, two sickly blue corpse-like arms began to slowly appear from the wall behind Valorie. Before I could warn her, a horrific ghastly creature with hollow eyes, an elongated mouth, and large bat-like wings started to phase through the wall of the inn, digging its sharp claws into Valorie's chest. While in the grasp of this creature, my sister began to look more and more pale and lose the spark of light in her pupils. Without hesitation, I lunged at the creature, striking it with a sword and screaming at it to let my sister go. The sword did not hit the ghoulish monster, but instead simply passed through its unnaturally thin body, as if it were but a mere smoke. However, the blow did catch the creature off guard enough to drop Valorie to the ground, who slowly began to regain life and color. "Come on, Val, we need to book it!" I shouted, grabbing her by the hand and firmly bursting through the front door of the inn. Unfortunately for us, many more of these same creatures awaited us outside. We were evidently outnumbered and fighting was not an option. So Val and I headed straight for the creepy mist surrounding the zone, while these monsters tried to relentlessly hunt us down. One almost got to me, but I seemed to be less affected by their attack, strangely enough. Valorie slung a few spells their way, which sadly seemed to be equally as useless against them as my sword. But it did appear to somehow slow them down. This advantage gave us enough time to lunge through the haze and escape the area. We ran and ran for what felt like hours, our whole bodies practically freezing from the chilling air, but eventually we escaped them. As the sun began to rise, we watched from a distance as the creatures retreated, with several glowing blue wispy orbs in tow. Presumably, the souls of the mangled man, the receptionist, and the many other unfortunate folk who weren't as lucky as we were when visiting the inn. "Come on, Ed. Let's get going," my sister stuttered, visibly shaken from the depravity that had just transpired. Really quickly, if you're a D&D player and you want to encounter these monsters at some point, consider clicking off the video right now and sending this to your dungeon master, because the next part will contain spoilers to what these creatures are and how to defeat them, so yeah. Furies are fiendish creatures that originate from Hades. Like their Yugoloth cousins, they are often used as mercenaries, but require a very specific form of payment. The only type of sustenance that a Fury can consume is the energy radiated by the soul of a living being. They most commonly steal the souls of other creatures they are sent to deal with, dragging their souls with them into Hades, where they devour their energy and turn the souls into new fiends. While Furies occasionally serve some kind of master, many of them operate without restrictions, taking the souls of whomever they want, often the person to discover the husk of their last victim. When a Fury takes the soul of a creature, the creature's body will remain technically alive, just without the ability to move, talk, think, hear, or feel. Many Furies mutilate their victims as a form of warning to anyone who dares to get involved in their machinations. And those soulless who have been mutilated by a Fury have a chance to return as zombies or other mindless undead. Here's the stat block for the Fury. Anyways, that was it for this first episode of D&D Creature Feature. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see another episode. I think there's at least one more coming, probably sometime around Halloween. But anyways, stay spooky everyone. Peace out.